Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Goal Line Hockey. As today we're going to continue the playoff predictions series. Make sure to check out our other videos. A lot going on now with the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's get right into this series between the Winnipeg Jets, who finished second in the Central Division, and the third seeded St. Louis Blues. So the head-to-head matchup between the Winnipeg Jets and the St. Louis Blues for the 2018-2019 season started off in October, October 4th. The Winnipeg Jets won that one 5-1. October 22nd, Winnipeg won again 5-4 in overtime. November 24th, Winnipeg wins again 8-4. So a pretty big, pretty substantial win there for Winnipeg. And December 7th, St. Louis wins the game 1-0. The season series 3-1 Winnipeg, if you've been keeping count. So the thing I notice here is Winnipeg was able to win one in overtime, so a close game. They were also able to blow out with 5-1 and 8-4 victories over the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis did win the most recent matchup, and that's really when the St. Louis Blues started to turn the corner. I mean, remember in January, this team was probably one of the last teams, probably dead last in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So kind of hard to get a feel for these two teams, as the last matchup was in the beginning of December. This team didn't turn around until January. Probably one of the worst teams in the NHL. They're one of the best. Definitely one of the best stories in the NHL this season. Absolutely. They were one of those teams that was done and out, trading Parayko, Tarasenko, trade them all out, Pietrangelo, get them all out of here. And then some guy named Jordan Binnington came in, and we'll talk about that as we look at the playoff positioning. Okay, so the positioning rankings for these two teams. Head-to-head, I have the forwards going to the Winnipeg Jets. Based off of the fact of what they did at the deadline. We saw them pick up Kevin Hayes as the second line center for this hockey team. You've got Brian Little, Mark Scheifele. Now you've got Kevin Hayes. There's a really good group, Jack Roslovic. So really good centers there in Winnipeg. St. Louis has some good guys, but the depth is a little bit young with some younger guys, and Sammy Blais and Tage Thompson. These are guys that we aren't sure what their potential fully is yet. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with this. But definitely could be an edge for the Winnipeg Jets. I truly believe they've got, I mean, it's stupid. You look at guys like Patrick Laine, Kyle Connor, Nikolai Ehlers. This team is really good up front, and it's really going to be a tough battle for the St. Louis Blues to match up with. Looking at defense, Winnipeg gets this one again. There's no denying that St. Louis has some good defensemen, Parayko, Pietrangelo, Edmondson, but it starts getting weak after those first two, and no discredit to Joel Edmondson. But look at Winnipeg. I mean, Tyler Myers, Dustin Byfuglien, what's his name? Enstrom. You just look at those guys, and unfortunately, it's a little bit of a loss for the St. Louis Blues. They just don't have the depth, and I think that was a big problem for most of the season, was they weren't healthy, and when their big guys weren't there, they weren't able to play that well, and their depth really didn't step up. And I mean, Josh Morrissey. I mean, we could go down the list. Jacob Trouba. It's unbelievable how good that defense there in Winnipeg is. That's going to be a real tough battle for the St. Louis Blues to handle. And then looking at goaltending, and I give the edge to the St. Louis Blues. And this is close, but the only reason I give it is because of how hot Jordan Binnington has been for the St. Louis Blues. I mean, he has been a great story in the NHL, and the way he handles himself is a really good. I think he could be a really good playoff performer, not letting the pressure get to him. But there's no denying that Connor Hellebuyck has been a huge factor for the Winnipeg Jets in their success, but he's looked a little bit shaky coming down the stretch post-trade deadline, and We'll see if he could be in playoff form, ready to go. But this is going to be an interesting matchup between these two teams. But goaltending, got to give it to the St. Louis Blues because of how well Binnington has played recently. All right. So, the moment we've all been waiting for, the prediction. So, I have the Winnipeg Jets winning this series in 7 games. So, some people were maybe thinking, 5, 6 games. No, I got 7 here, and the reason why is I think Jordan Binnington is going to have a run. We saw Matt Murray do it a couple years ago with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was struggling throughout most of the season. Matt Murray comes in and plays unbelievable hockey, gets the team into the playoffs, not only gets them into the playoffs, but gets them to the Stanley Cup final and winning a Stanley Cup. And really, I think that's going to be the determining factor in this series and why it's going to be so close. It's going to be a goal-by-goal battle between Hellebuck and Jordan Binnington, and I would not be surprised if puck luck went the St. Louis Blues way, or Winnipeg just has played the way they have recently, not so great. St. Louis could really come in here and steal this series out from under the Winnipeg Jets, and it would not surprise me if Patrick Laine struggles again, hits that really cold streak. This could be a major issue for the Winnipeg Jets, but I have them winning the series. They've got the depth. Like I said, Kevin Hayes, I think, is a huge factor for this team. He's been a great acquisition for the Winnipeg Jets, and I think he's going to play a huge role in this team getting past the St. Louis Blues. So tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm right. Leave your predictions. Who do you think is going to win this series, the St. Louis Blues or the Winnipeg Jets? Really, either way for the St. Louis Blues, where they started, like I said, in January to where they are now, absolutely one of the best stories in hockey by far this season. And you get hot at the right time, you could really go on a run. And they might do that. They might go on a real run here in the playoffs. See what happens. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe. Thank you for checking us out here at Goal Line Hockey. And best of luck to your playoff brackets for the first round.